per 9000's game room.
Gameground started off as an arcade game, which was released in Japan, the United States and Canada in 1988. It ran on the Sega System 24 architecture, which is the same hardware that would go on to be used for the game Bonanza Bros. Gameground was ported to the Sega Master System in 1990, and then the Sega Megadrive, or as Americans know it, the Genesis, in 1991. And there was also a PC Engine Super CD-ROM version called Gameground SX, which was released a year later. That's the only version I've never played. I will obviously be focusing on the Megadrive one here. Gameground originally came into my life back in my childhood Megadrive owning days, when I used to visit an indie game store which not only had an awesome selection, it also did a pretty roaring trade in import software. Now, one of the best things about this shop is that once a game had been released in the UK, any Japanese copies it had laying around would generally get marked down to about £5, which just happened to be exactly the amount of pocket money I got per week. So as you can imagine, at one time my collection was very heavily filled with Japanese games. And on one fateful week, the game I happened to buy was none other than Gameground. I have to say that from the second I got home I adored this game, and over the years, the more I have played it, the more I have appreciated what it has to offer. I find it important to admit here that although I consider Gameground a Megadrive title, as I've previously mentioned, it was an arcade machine first, and it even hit the Master System before finding its way onto the Megadrive. But I didn't realise this at the time, as the Megadrive was my first exposure to the game, although I did play the other two later. Okay, so I'm going to start with giving you an idea of what Gameground's story is. Basically, there was a society which had endured peace for so long that they'd basically lost both the brains and guts for war. This concerned the government, and they decided the answer was to develop a computer simulation. However, suddenly and without warning, their supercomputer went haywire, and to combat this, 3 warriors were dispatched into the Gameground system to rescue those who were trapped within it, and to try to shut the system down. Now, not to be too nitpicky, but if you have 3 warriors good enough to do this, then surely you could have just got them to train people, instead of building a supercomputer that might well kill everyone. Just a thought. I think it's an interesting fact to slip in at this point that the makers of Gameground said that they were inspired by the classic Gauntlet. But does that mean that this plays like Gauntlet? Well, you play as small little characters and you move in a similar way and you're trying to reach the exit in every level, but then that's about the point any real similarity ends. Unlike Gauntlet, you don't play in big screen mazes full of scrolling, you play in little compact stages. Yes, you have to depend on both your instincts and reflexes, but arguably a lot more in this game, as it's one hit and you're dead territory here, so every decision and movement really counts. The thing that makes Gameground great is that it's one of those games which is incredibly easy to pick up but hard to master. The controls are simplistic and work very well. Add on top of that the fact that it always makes you feel like you have the abilities needed to complete a level. If you don't manage to do so, it's your own fault, not any bad programming or glitches. So what do you do in Gameground? Well, quite simply, you start with 3 characters and you either have to kill every enemy in a level or at least get one of the characters through the level's exit to progress. If a character dies, well, at first they remain on the ground as a little icon guy who you can save if you have a character left to pick them up and make it to the exit with. In much the same way, you'll come across new characters. They'll start off as little guys in the level who, if you collect, will then join you. Each of the characters comes from a different time period and has different skills. You'll find knights who shoot fireballs, guys who use rifles, women with grenades, people with spears, and even people with ray guns, and all of them will have their own advantages and disadvantages and uses, and it's up to you to work out who to use, when and how. You can play Gameground for a long time, or you can pick it up now and then and just have a quick little blast on it. It has a 2-player mode in which you try to get through the levels together, which is brilliant for when you want a good buddy game. Let's face it, so many games over the years have only offered versus mode when it comes to multiplayer, so something you can tackle between you together, brilliant. The graphics in this game are incredibly simplistic, they're small and basically functional. It's certainly not a game which is going to sell itself on its looks. I think the music is very catchy and it really helps to heighten the feelings of tension and excitement you get when playing this game. I do think though that despite how basic the game looks, if you give it a good go, especially if you try it side by side with a buddy, then you'll be sold on it. If I had to score this game, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's a unique game that should definitely be tried by more people. So what about playing it now? Well, if you actually want it on a Megadrive, it seems to be one of those games that varies widely in price. If you can play import games, then if you're lucky you might find a Japanese copy complete for about £25. I remember a few years back when you could get an English cart of it for like £10, but loose carts of it in general look a bit thin on the ground nowadays. Looking at copies of this game on eBay showed me something that annoyed me no end. Someone was selling a boxed Japanese copy where the cart had been filed down to fit in a European Megadrive. It looked like it had been filed down by a drunken 5-year-old high on sugar. It was a complete mess. Now, while I'd still rather not see carts altered at all, the very least the person who did this could do would be to heat up a knife to a very hot temperature and do a nice smooth job of planing the side off, so that it at least looked halfway okay. To be honest though, I never see why anybody does this thing of filing Japanese carts down. You can file every single cart you own down so you don't have to use a converter, or you can unscrew the Megadrive and carefully file down the machine's cartridge slot. Why ruin 20 carts when you can just alter the machine? Makes no sense whatsoever. Okay, so as far as other ways to sample this game, well, there was a remake for the PlayStation 2 as part of Sega's Japan-only Sega Ages series, and it found itself included in the Sega Megadrive collection on the PlayStation 2 and the PSP in 2006. And then it was also in the Sega Ultimate Megadrive collection for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 in 2009. It's also made its way onto the PC through Steam. However you try it though, I think it's a great game and it's a shame it never had a sequel. Okay, that's Kerr9000 signing off saying keep on gaming.